Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacency, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray, leering at you from the woodline. Visit the mothership at intothefrayradio.com. There you can find all the episodes, the blog posts, ITF gear, and sign up for the free guest newsletter. The weekly show is, of course, always free and available in all podcatchers, but if you'd like to support the show, and why wouldn't you, go to the website and click Become an Insider, which in turn gets you extra content each and every month. And by the way, if you would be so kind as to leave a rating and review in your listening platform of choice, Cosmic Karma shall be yours. Be part of the discussion by joining the interactive ITF Facebook group. Follow on Twitter at ITF_radio and Instagram. If you have an experience that you'd like to share, email Shannon at intothefrayradio.com or call the hotline anytime at 844-866-3366. Thanks so much for listening. Now, if you would be so kind, buckle up your safety belts. Put that tray table in the upright position. Liftoff is upon us.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Did everybody stay up late last night? Any hangovers or anything?
Oh, no, none of those.
Yeah. That would just be crazy, right?
Oh, actually, I didn't drink but one finger of Johnny Walker Black last night, but I was going to tell all you guys, actually. And we could even talk about this or something if you wanted to, even though it's not really related to Seven Ages. But have you all seen Blade Runner 2049 yet?
No.
Mm-mm.
God almighty. I went ahead and just bought it in HD because it was New Year's Eve and we had that ice thing happen and I couldn't leave the house, literally. I mean, I drove out today and there were cars still off the sides of the roads that had wrecked last night. But, yeah. But I bought that movie and just decided to bunker down and watch it. That is one of the most visually stunning films I've ever seen. It was almost as good as the original.
Wow.
Man, yeah, it was that good. Yeah. I mean, very good. Very good. So anyway, yeah.
I've been hearing mixed reviews, but those that have seen it and they actually like it are saying they don't like it, they love it. So that's good to hear.
A lot of people didn't like it because
it was kind of a slow build, but
it is. It's a really slow build, but see, I like a good film that does that, like 2001: Space Odyssey, Apocalypse Now, all those classic films that did that. I love those, and everybody's like, "Oh, I hate those movies." So, but they aren't for everybody. I get it.
I think they just want the action straight out of the gate. I don't really understand that for every movie. They can't all be like that.
Yeah, and sometimes I want that. Sometimes I like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying Blade Runner as a film, the contrast, the film settings, the colors, the sets, it was just incredible. Everything was just so visually. I mean, again, the only word I could tell you is it was one of the most visually stunning films I've seen in a long time. Yeah, so if y'all ever watch it, make sure you do it in widescreen HD. Turn out the lights. Just take it all in. It's just incredible. God.
Awesome.
Did you guys see it? What did you think of that one?
Oh,
I actually liked it pretty well. Jason didn't like it.
Yeah?
Well, that's because I like the original It so much, except for the ending that sucked. But yeah, just, the original vibe, when you try to recreate a vibe, see, but then again, I'm like an 80s, early 90s guy. I'm like, you don't f with my original movies. You know, you don't redo Footloose, you don't redo Ghostbusters.
Right. Oh, don't even get me started on that one.
Do it.
Oh yeah.
And I like the original Pennywise so much. This one I thought was just too. It was too. I don't know.
They tried too hard.
Yeah, just like they pushed too hard. The original one had the red nose, and he just looked like a kind of a fucked up normal clown.
Right. The same ones that were stalking the woods and asking kids to come play. I mean, that's pretty damn creepy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that actually does happen these days.
I know, it's terrifying.
God almighty.
It's not that far out of the realm of possibility.
I will say, though, that Bill Skarsgård, the way, first of all, his eyeballs just looked all funky, like, you know, he's looking two different directions, like my pug does. But his cadence, the way he spoke was mesmerizing. I think I could watch it again just for that. And the kids, their relationship was great. See, I'm still working through reading the book. I had never even read the book before, so I'm kind of doing
Looks a little up in some parts, isn't it?
Yeah. Is there some kind of strange sewer scene where the kids are not kids anymore? I haven't gotten to that yet, but I've been told to watch out for that one.
Well, yeah. I
read that about.
It's such a damn book, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read Stephen King before, though, so it shouldn't be too shocking. He's pretty demented in a lot of ways. Lovely ways.
You read what?
Oh, I was my side breaking up a little bit?
Oh, no. I didn't hear what you were saying.
Oh, no, I was just saying I've read Stephen King before, so I know what to expect with him.
Yeah.
He can get pretty graphic, and in plenty of other ways besides just gore, so I'm ready for it.
Oh, yeah. Hey, by the way, guys, so just to commemorate the evening, here it is, New Year's Day. It is a wolf moon tonight, the full moon, which I just noticed here on the East Coast.
Did you see it yet?
Yeah, I did. Did you?
Yeah, it's crazy looking.
It's gorgeous, but it's so cold I can't even go out there and take it all in, you know?
It's very cold. It explains that wild party we had last night.
Yeah, right.
Bit unusual.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I've got this visualization system with actually the resolution is not great, but I've got this attachment that allows us to run a webcam into my Celestron telescope and then visualize that over on this computer screen over here. And sometime when we're out in the field or doing something, or if we're maybe down there in Charleston sometime, my telescope's not that hard to pack up and bring along, and it might actually be fun to do something like that. I love that.
I had that same one for a while.
Did you have
the same telescope, I think, that you have?
Really? Yeah.
I do want to ask you guys about that ice storm. Is that going to be lasting for a certain amount of time where you're like, oh, I need to eat some canned food and not really have problems?
No.
I think
not where we live.
Yeah.
I'm in Savannah, Georgia, so
we're well clear of all that craziness.
They haven't seen a snowflake here in years. Literally years. It snowed.
Yeah, I feel your pain on that one. I posted a picture today just to be an asshole, and I put it on Instagram and Facebook, and I went for a little jog, and I'm like, I'm just gonna fuck with people a little bit. So I'm like, God, I'm so sick of this damn weather, and people are like, you Shannon, it's negative 20 here.
I was like, did she really mean that? Or
no, I purposely didn't put any like winks or
in Ohio,
middle finger emojis. Nothing like that. So yeah, I think some people really are not getting the joke, but that's okay. I knew that would happen.
Well, considering how much time we spent in Ohio just this last fall, it's a shame once again we missed you. I missed you in Point Pleasant 2 years ago. Yep. And then this past year, I can say last year now, the three of us, we were in Ohio.
Yeah.
So we would have been right in your neighborhood there, basically, or at least close enough.
Neighborhood anyway. We did go. We thought of you when we tried to get that picture of Salt Fork, and we drove by. I'm like, hey, that's Shannon's place.
Oh,
get a picture.
It's my stomping grounds. Oh, and that brings up a really good point. I told Jason earlier, you guys, that so I had been in Ohio for a couple of years, and I would frequently travel south for Sasquatch reasons, Sasquatchery. But I had never gone to the Serpent Mound. I had never gone to any of the Hopewell sites, anything like that. So I was like, oh, I'm getting on with three guys that are very serious about this research. And I was there for 2 years and didn't even touch any of those sites. So I felt a little guilty. So I wanted to go ahead and admit that guilt to you guys before we get started.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, I mean, if you just want to talk about clowns or something, we can do that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty famous or infamous for getting really off track. I mean, it makes for a good show most of the time, but yeah, I definitely get the information out there for 7 Ages because it looks like a really fun time. You guys have been busy packing a lot of trips in already.
Oh, yeah. We definitely have.
We didn't have these pesky jobs and stuff. We would get a
Yeah,
lot
they
more.
suck, don't they?
Yeah. Not having to make a living's really getting in the way of this.
Meanwhile, for me, 7 Ages is a full-time job that's getting in the way of making a living.
Right. Okay, so whose idea was 7 Ages? Can we just kind of take it back before we talk about the trips and what you guys are on the hunt for and everything? Where did that idea come from, and what's kind of the goal of it?
I think it's more like a meeting of minds where three people with different but similar interests came together, and then it kind of hijacked this idea from last Christmas that was meant to be one thing, and then kind of turned into this. Oh, hey, cool, we can all do this, and it's going to be different but awesome. So yes, the democracy of 7 Ages is. Really, it sounds. I don't know if you could even call it a democracy. I think I speak for all three of us in saying that it seems to have a mind of its own.
So, I mean, when you guys thought about the idea for it, and I know there's the website's up, it's under construction. It's 7ages.org. If anybody wants to pop over there right now while they're listening, there's a podcast coming up, which we will talk about. And then you guys are obviously going to be writing and producing some videos for this, but has the genesis of the original idea, has it been changing at all from what you guys originally have mentioned, besides the fact that it was going to be one thing and now it's this other? But throughout your travels so far, I mean, has anything else come up that you're like, whoa, we need to add this, or oh, that was unexpected?
Well, the whole entire process has really been unbelievable, actually. And 7 Ages is kind of something that is manifesting itself. It's something we've been joking about. I called Mike a few months ago and I was like, look, man, I know we've been talking about doing this thing. We'd already been started together on some other projects, and we were at that point just bringing James in as our third partner with this whole thing. But we still weren't sure exactly where it was going to go. But all of a sudden, everything just started falling into place, and we could kind of, get an idea of what direction we were going to go with it. And I told Mike, I was like, look, man, this thing's happening whether we want it to or not. So just like strap in and get ready, because it's manifesting itself literally on a daily basis. And then it has changed. It's changed pretty dramatically from what we had originally thought about when we first sat down to talk about it. We had some ideas that we were tossing around. We had a general idea of where we wanted to go with it, but it's vastly changed since then. It's, if anything, become much more defined. It's become more relevant to a given topic, but able to extend out to other ideas outside of the mainstream.
Hey, guys, can I interject real quick? And then I want to throw it to Waldo. But just so that people understand what in the world we're even talking about, we don't mean to sound so nebulous. But, I mean, like Jason and I have really said, sometimes you start a project with an intention, and it almost wills itself into being as something different. So for people who may be sitting at home and saying, well, what in the world is 7 Ages? Who are James Waldo, Jason Pentrail, and Micah Hanks? Some of your listeners, Shannon, may know me already. It's my intention for them to know these two guys. And how I got to know them was from my previous endeavor. So, I mean, I should really kind of explain that, with the Gralien Report podcast, James and Jason had been independent researchers and actually professionals in their fields of Jason's environmental science and James with professional geology, respectively. But I think what probably happened first was that I met Jason Pentrail in Charleston, South Carolina. So for those who would want to know really how it all started, that's the first thing. He offered to play tour guide for me when I was in town with my band for a couple of we were in town for a couple of days, and he spent a couple of hours and showed us stuff I never knew about Charleston, and also stuff about paleontological history. Around that same time, though, James, you emailed me for the first time about long echo delays and put me onto your buddy George Ure's website. And so I had this dialogue going with the two of these guys, and what we all had in common at that time was, an interest in mysteries of nature and science, and especially history, geology, ancient mysteries. I was kind of looking more geological phenomena myself at that time. James, you may not even know this. I mean, again, what my focus was, I just met Randall Carlson in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He'd invited me to a private lecture here in Western North Carolina. He blew my mind talking about the Younger Dryas event. And so I was really into this. And Jason's like, well, man, that's really kind of my big thing. And I do remember there was this one day that Jason and I had this big, like 3 or 4 hour telephone conversation where we were just like, why don't we just compare some notes? We realized we were into a lot of the same stuff, and that led to a research trip to Charleston, South Carolina that he and Team Graylian did. And then we did another one this past year and invited James to come along. And so at this point, I'll throw it back over to James, but really that's how we all kind of met. And it became increasingly apparent to me at one point that, it's like this guy Jason and I are doing this stuff, and then James is this dude down in Savannah who's emailing me all this incredible stuff. I said to Jason, I said, you mind if I introduce you to James Waldo via email? And before I knew it, I go down to Jason's house. We're doing a research weekend. And he says, by the way, we're going to Skype with James Waldo today at 2:00. And so and we actually met face-to-face via the web. So that's how it kind of came together. But then I'll throw it over to James in terms of, how he comes into all this.
Right. So this has kind of been, this evolving process. And honestly, it's really weird how it kind of came together. But when we did the Skype call that Micah was just talking about, I had in my neighborhood, they did an excavation and they were going to put in a big pond and whatnot. So when there was no construction crew over there, being the geologist that I am, I wanted to go over and just kind of poke around in the excavation and see if I could find any fossils or anything like that. So, but in the same time frame, Jason and Mike had been talking about the Younger Dryas event and all this stuff, and I had picked up a book on it because I didn't really know. I mean, I knew about it, and I knew about a lot of the stuff that Randall Carlson talks about, just from being out west and doing like geology schools, and we do like mapping schools when you're in college and that kind of thing. So, I knew about this black mat layer, which is one of the identifiers of this Younger Dryas boundary layer in the sediment. So anyway, I find there's a black layer and all of this sandy soil out here about 6 feet down. So I'm like, holy crap, maybe, and nobody's known to had found it in the southeast down here. So I collected some samples and I mailed them to Jason, and then they opened the samples and we talked about it over Skype. And then we had our meet up in Charleston. And then I don't remember how long it was after that, but they started to talk to me about this idea about 7 ages. And I thought, well, that's cool. So it kind of didn't really get going. It sort of did. We recorded, we did a show, and I was just now kind of thinking about doing some podcasting myself and buying some equipment. And then there was like a lag period where like nothing happened. But then all of a sudden this thing came alive. And I mean, it just took off. We're just really, I felt like we were just along for the ride. And it's really, once it took root, here we are. I mean, it's been crazy.
And I can safely blame Hurricane Jose for that lag period where nothing was happening because, full disclosure, folks, I had to go on the Ancient Mysteries cruise. And that was very interesting because we're setting sail from New York. And on our way to Bermuda, Hurricane Jose is coming up from the south. And it took the expression choppy waters. You took that to an all new level. Yeah. So, yeah, long story short, I had a really busy fall. And I remember Jason calling me up at one point and kind of saying, man, are you okay? What's going on? I hadn't heard from you. We got a bunch of stuff to do. And I was like, look, give me a month and watch. Stuff's going to happen. And sure enough, these guys, they planned this research trip up to your old neck of the woods, Ohio, shortly after. I mean, literally actually about, well, maybe it was like just within a couple of weeks after I got back, I think, guys. And then we went up there, and as James so eloquently put it, things began to manifest themselves. And so now the current iteration of 7 Ages, after kind of going through numerous stages, a lot of independent stuff, a lot of mutual stuff, a lot of back and forth, a lot of trying to figure things out, seems pretty evident that, our focus on exploring history, archaeology, but also science and culture, trying to understand certain mysteries of the past, but also trying to apply more science to those mysteries than I think many in popular media that we see today are doing. That is the intent, the express focus, and the objective of what has become the 7 Ages Research Associates. And here we are today.
So are you guys bringing forward kind of, is there any look at alternative history, or is this more at looking at some of the forgotten or little known, the native groups of peoples that were here?
Well, it's a lot of things. And to begin, it's first of all, it's a multidisciplinary focus. So as far as the research goes, we're looking at things that are not just Native Americans. So let me just say that first. We all have a big interest in the peopling of America. I personally have a long-standing, even from childhood, interest in Native American culture, artifacts, things of that nature. And being that is a huge part and a majority of the history that we do find here in North America, it will be on a regular basis what you can expect from the team. But we're interested in all things historical, paleontological, science, space, astronomy, all types of different things. So our research is going to be focused on, a variety of topics, a variety of subjects. There will be other people, I'm sure, as we move forward that we're going to meet, that we're going to work with, that will bring into the team. The idea behind it is almost like a citizen scientist type of approach, where we have actual scientists, we have avocationalists, we have people from all different disciplines who are willing to volunteer with us, provide us with information. And basically what we do is just go around and look at things that are historical fact, look at things that have a historical mystery around it. You use the word alternative history. Some of that will be examined. However, the focus of the research will be on things that are scientifically provable. However, we are willing to entertain, to a certain degree, a lot of what we consider to be alternative history, because, as we know, sometimes it does take years, even decades, to update history books and to change things as needed. But we will take that on a case-by-case basis.
And I'll just interject here also. One thing really quickly to touch on something Jason said. He used a term that's a little esoteric outside of our field, but we have started using this a lot within the kind of multidisciplinary work that we're doing. That is avocationalist. That's A-V-C, avocation, not advocation, okay? Avocationalist. That term just basically describes a person who is a dedicated amateur in their field. And when we first heard this, again, I wasn't even familiar with the term, and we're like an advocate. No, it's avocationist or advocationalist. So, and you hear that a lot with regard to archaeology, people who essentially are well versed and very knowledgeable in the history and the cultures and the archaeology of their region. And people who often, outside of the academic training and the discipline in the actual academic field, are nonetheless, by virtue of their interest, able to make discoveries, discern things, and do so from a fairly learned perspective. And so I think that, one of the things that, whoops, I think my submarine's going off there. But again, the avocationalist and the role of the avocationalist is often one of the most important things in archaeology, because we've got guys like Heinrich Schliemann. We've got guys, frankly, outside of archaeology, we could say guys like Charles Darwin that have contributed great discoveries, but they were essentially autodidact, self-taught, but very well knowledgeable in their fields. And these kinds of people throughout history, we find time and time again, often are leading the way. Now, again, when Jason also mentioned that, we've got interests in, maybe fringe things too, our goal is not to dismiss those things. Our goal is, of course, to try and apply science to it. And I think I can speak for all these guys that we've got a pretty multifaceted background that is far more in keeping with the kind of stuff that you talk about on this very podcast, Shannon. As you know, of course, and some of your listeners know, with my background with the Graylian Report, it's a very different kind of side of things that we're doing with Seven Ages. And the reason for that is because while we're all passionate about some of the mysteries of our existence, there's a lot of writing and a lot of speculating about those things. But guys, at the end of the day, what can we apply hard science to, and really further our knowledge? How can we take our understanding of these things to another level? And so really, part of it is thinking scientifically about mysteries, but the other part of it is, dealing with subjects to which science can be better applied, and not just, allowing our minds to run rampant with pure speculation all the time. And hence why I think we're focusing on these, historical, archaeological, science and culture aspects of things. And yeah, that covers a wide area of knowledge, but we're fascinated with all of it. And hey, foods and beverages too, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, look at Atlas Obscura. They just added that whole food and beverage section to their website too. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, we were talking about our interdisciplinary approach. 1 week we may have a show about Hopewell Mounds, and then the next week maybe a show about Kentucky bourbon or the Bourbon Trail or distilling or something along those topics. Jason?
Yeah, and that's what we're saying. So what you can basically, to give you an idea of what you can expect from the different entities that we have, because we do have a way for you to read about what we're doing, a way for you to watch what we're doing, and a way for you to listen what we're doing. So between the YouTube, the podcast, and 7ages.org, you'll be able to see and interact with us. The idea when we did this was we wanted to be able to bring people on the journey with us as best we can. So we figured, if we cover all forms of medium there, we should be able to appeal to a wider variety of people. And I know that if I'm able to listen to a show and then go see video of exactly what the people are talking about, it drives the points home a little bit better. It allows you to, as a listener and a viewer, to feel like you are part of the team, and kind of builds a family feel to it. And that's kind of what we're going for. In addition to that, though, what you can expect from 7ages.org, that, of course, will be the home of all three of those entities. But on there, you will also find original articles by all three of us. As we build this thing and move into the future, I'm sure there will be other authors that you can find there as well. But that'll be a home for all of the three entities collectively. But, it'll be constantly updated with new original material written by the three of us. In addition, the YouTube will show you all the adventures that we're going on. We'll try to film as much as we possibly can. And then the podcast is going to be a little bit more diverse in its approach. So you can expect generally to hear segments such as, up-to-date news, science and history and archaeology, paleontology, all kinds of different disciplines, but from a little bit more entertaining standpoint. And then you'll have, the central focus of whatever that episode is. And then we're going to try to wrap, most of the episodes up with some fun little segments. You never know which one you're going to get. It's going to be like a surprise each time. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little bit different than anything I think that's out there now. And hopefully that the listeners will be able to appreciate all three of those entities together.
And how about the origin of the name?
The origin, Micah.
Yeah, sorry. I actually better tackle that one. So this is one thing that it's rather complex. So there are a lot of different concepts that relate to this. Like, for instance, one of these has to do with the 6 ages of the world. The actual name 7 ages is directly a reference to William Shakespeare and the passage, of course, from the famous play "All the World is a Stage and We Are Merely Players," in which he resolves that stanza describing that each person basically in life goes through stages, and in this summarizes the 7 ages of man is what he said. I always liked that expression, the 7 ages. Although maybe, more in keeping with the times, the 7 ages of humankind, we could say. But an earlier concept, which involves, this actually at least goes back to St. Augustine, which would have been around like AD 400, is the 6 ages of the world. But the thing is that although it was often called 6 ages of the world, the general idea here is that there was a 7th age beyond that which was not of this world. The eternal rest, or, the heavenly body that exists in the afterlife. So in totality, really, the 7 ages of humankind and our progression through life takes us from conception and our early years all the way through death and beyond. And so you can't talk about archaeology and not be fascinated with the world beyond. anthropology, many would say, deals a lot with this and with ancestral worship and things like this. I mean, really the whole summation of the ancient religions of ancient Egypt, which really is almost an archaeological area that is synonymous with the discipline of archaeology as we know it today. I mean, it had to do everything with the underworld and with the concept of once a pharaoh or anyone dies and they pass on into the afterlife, how the continuation of their being, their bodily self may be left behind, but there is some essence that goes on. So Seven Ages, of course, borrowed primarily from William Shakespeare, really is applied to a lot of different areas of thought. And also, very simply, numerologically, number 7 is kind of my lucky number. And I always felt like Seven Ages was just a lucky name. So I remember last winter I sat in my bunker poring over different names for sites. And Jason was contributing names for sites too, because at that point he and I were working together on it. And we not literally spend, at least a month just wondering about the name. And it wasn't just pick the one that we like. There were all these days, you know how it is, search engine optimization, all the technical sides of it too. And so we wanted to pick what was best representative of what we do, but something that we could use in the information age, So 8 Ages was taken. We went with 7ages.org.
What I'm pretty excited about is the fact that you guys are quite musical. So I'm sure that you will also have very original scores of music for 7 Ages.
Well, it's funny that you mention that because as with all of Micah's projects, you're exactly right. The theme music is an original piece written by none other than Micah Hanks. Fantastic, by the way. We've gotten really good feedback on the people who's heard it so far. High energy, have a different feel to it. Everything about 7 Ages is unique to 7 Ages. So you may pick up on one or two little things here and there if you've been a listener of the Grayling Report or the Middle Theory or some of Micah's other shows in the past. But 7 Ages is indeed its own entity. Everything from the theme music to the way that we have it set up to the guests that we have. And that's kind of something I want to drive home as well. Oftentimes in the world of podcasting, inevitably you see kind of the same group of guests making their way from podcast to podcast. Mm-hmm. And, that's fine in a way, but, after you've heard the same guest maybe 3-4 times in a row on different podcasts, you kind of have the idea of what the interview is going to sound like. What we're doing at 7 Ages is when we do interviews and guests, we're finding brand new people that no one's ever heard from before, or at least the general public. These are all going to be new people. Some of them may be familiar to some if you're really into archaeology and things like that. But for the most part, we're seeking out new people because we want to get new perspectives. We want to get new ideas. We want to have a different way of approaching some of these subjects that we believe has been overlooked in the past. So along with all the original content and the original segments that we're producing currently, the theme song is a brand new piece that I think we're all very, very proud of. And I think Micah did an excellent and outstanding job on the brand new 7 Ages theme song.
Yeah, and you can hear it. It's on, we have that promo video, trailer video. It's on Facebook. I did
watch that. So that will be the intro music?
Yes.
Yeah, I just watched that today. Very nice.
I have to say that there's that kind of cuts to the chase for purpose of editing and everything with the video that we did. But the actual podcast intro is going to have some even more esoteric elements. I know Jason, a lot of the time what we'll do is, even if it's like a musical thing and I'm doing the recording and executing it, Jason and James are both guitar players. And so they'll be like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? So these guys are often giving me ideas. And it's not just like that with music, with our the logo that we've designed. I'm extremely proud of the logo. And in truth, again, that was very much a mutual effort. We had designed one that we like, and we found that there were, some issues with it in terms of branding and everything. And you got to keep, when it comes to like antiquity, ancient mysteries, ancient religions, the esoteric theosophical stuff, ancient Egypt especially, and so much borrowed from ancient Egypt and that is recurring in terms of symbolic motifs that you find in cults, religions, secret societies, and fraternal orders over the ages. Again, symbols are very important to humankind. We like our symbols, and so we wanted to have one of our own. We found early on that there were some issues with the first one, which it sucked, just to be honest. I can't put it any more simply. I mean, we were unhappy we had to do a redesign, but the guys and I got together. Jason was feeding me a lot of ideas. We were showing it to Waldo, and Waldo was giving us feedback and everything. And what we ended up with, the 7 Ages logo, which I think it's safe to say, guys, again, the site is online at 7ages.org, and you can actually see the site, the logo, some of the articles are up and everything. Like everything else, whether it's music, imagery, it's very much a mutual effort. And, I think, even if one of the three of us may be executing things, it's great to kind of have a, all hands on deck kind of approach with all this. The end result thereby ends up being rather eclectic, and I enjoy that.
So will 7 Ages be a weekly podcast, or is that not something that you guys have really decided on yet?
Well, the current plan is to do a every 2 weeks at present, but I think that in the eventual sense, we'll see where things go. The thing about 7 Ages, of course, is that rather than just being like a new podcast, there's a lot of different media, and we're all trying to stay on top of that. So, I think that it's really going to definitely have to be kind of a thing where we are dividing our attention among a variety of different outlets, which, as Jason said already, includes YouTube and videos that we're going to be putting up of the footage that we're filming while we're out on the road. At least every 2 weeks, there will be the podcasts that are going up, which cover a variety of different historical, science, culture, archaeological discussions and topics, and all different kinds of other things too. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get to some of the sites that you guys have visited. One more question, though, about the podcast before we move on from that. When will that be debuting? And will that debut at the same time that you get some of the videos up on YouTube, or how's that working?
Yeah, so all of that will debut about the same time. We're shooting for the 5th of January, this Friday.
Nice.
So as far as the podcast goes, which we're actually calling it the Audio Journal, which is, kind of classier sounding. It's got a nice ring to it. We'd like to have about 3 episodes ready to go that people can download, on iTunes and all the normal services, or the avenues where you can pick those things up. The other thing about the show, Micah was saying, every 2 weeks. What I'd like to remind everybody is this. Even though this is a podcast or our audio journal, there's a lot more to it than that, because we're not just talking about things. We're actually out in the field doing work and, on research trips. And, we've done some actual archaeological digs in South Carolina. And so we have to develop a lot of our material for the show. So some of the stuff for our first show has been in the works since October.
Right.
Okay?
And Shannon, I just want to explain something to listeners who are probably going, what does that mean, audio? This is something that we came up with quite a while ago, really before we even had the name. We had the idea of the audio journal, and what kind of separates that from what we just consider to be a normal podcast is the fact that because we are going to be on scene a lot of times, because we'll actually be doing excavations, we'll actually be people in the field as things are happening in live time. We decided to sort of make a journal out of that. So we're going to have our microphones out there in the field. We're going to be talking about our impressions of different things as it's literally happening right in front of us. And then when we get back to our hotels at night, or whatever the case may be, we can reflect on that in sort of a journal style, as if we were making a audio journal entry. And we plan on putting that into the podcast as a whole. So that's what we mean when we say 7 Ages Audio Journal.
Tell her about the drone.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Tell her about the drone, he says.
Oh, the drone. Oh, yeah. What happened with the drone? Let's hear it.
Well, a lot of fun things have happened with the drone. But
who crashed it?
Yeah. Well, amazingly, Shannon, I have, being the pilot of the drone here, I have not yet crashed the drone. But, the drone is, you might say, emblematic of what we're trying to do with this group, because back in the old days when you did archaeology, aerial reconnaissance, which is a thing, and it's been made so much easier thanks to things like satellite imagery, Google satellites, and whatnot. Jason and James and I have been plenty of times where we're scoping out a location that we're going to be going to, or a property we've been invited to look at, and we will get on Google satellite, and we can actually look at where the creeks and the waterways run and roads and things like that, and get the general position of the land, the geographic layout. Back in the old days, though, if you were doing an archaeological survey, you had to, get your photographs by other means. And often, I kid you not, they would send up balloons with film cameras with timers attached to them, or they would even use kites to try and photograph.
Oh, man.
Yeah, from above.
Imagine that.
The drone has really changed not only our life, but I think the way that this kind of research is being done. And that's something we're so excited about, because as much as we're looking at the ancient past, we're trying to stay kind of on the cutting edge of what technology is bringing into this and the ways that we can use technology to study things. I mean, one more quick example, for instance, we were out there on a dig site on private property that were friends of Jason's that we were able to get out onto and conduct an excavation. Some of the things that we were utilizing were altimeter and barometer apps so that we could gauge what our altitude was, and then we could dig down from there and generally have our parameters set not only in terms of northwest, southeast, directional, but also in terms of altitude. And so we're working with technology virtually in any way you can imagine to try and further this process at least as intelligently, but perhaps more efficiently than it's been able to have been done in the past. And yeah, the drone, James, definitely helps with that.
Can you guys imagine the amount of expletives used when someone was trying to fly a kite and get shots? It must have been just quite the show.
Think about that. I mean,
It's
you've got a
insane.
camera attached to a kite, and you're trying to get it. How do you even do that?
That just makes me crack up just thinking about it. Although if I tried it, it would be me using many expletives. So, today when I was stalking all of the content that you guys have up so far, I have the list of the places that you've been so far, but I want to do it a little bit differently. And I wanted to go with each one of you and ask you, what was your favorite site that you've visited so far?
James?
Well, I have to say Metacroft Rock Shelter. I thought that was the coolest place that we've been. Yeah, that was definitely it. And it was new, that was new to me. I did not know that existed before. It's the oldest continually habitated site in North America. I think it goes back 16,000 years. So that's pretty cool.
There was on that trip, Shannon, there was so many things that happened. I tell you, it's really hard to just focus on one thing. We had an agenda when we went on that trip. We knew where we were going for the most part. However, we had a lot of surprises along the way too. So those surprises are often the most fun because you didn't have anticipation building up to them. And one of those places was Mound City there in southern Ohio, which is a Hopewell site. And it just so happened that we had our agenda planned out. We were supposed to be going from Flint Ridge, which I greatly enjoyed that experience as well, which is an old quarry where Native Americans would come for thousands of years to quarry stone for making tools and lithics. A fantastic experience being able to go out there to that state park. But we were basically leaving from there and going to just spend the night in, was it Chillicothe? Is that the name of the city?
Chillicothe,
Yeah.
I believe.
Mhm.
Chillicothe.
Yeah, in southern Ohio there. And basically, James had just made that as part of the travel plans, but we didn't realize that the Hopewell Mound City site was less than 5 minutes up the road. So as we were pulling in that night, we said, we got to get up in the morning because we got plenty of time to get down to Serpent Mound because that was our next destination. But we had all day long to get there, and it was only a few hours away. So we said, that's perfect. Let's get up in the morning and go see this Hopewell site. Well, we got there, and as we're unpacking all our gear and doing everything that we're normally do to get ready for filming and audio and all those type of things, we made our way into the little gift shop and museum there and began talking with some of the on-site historians. And they just began to describe this unbelievable history to us that, we're all just sitting there slack-jawed like, oh my God, how did we miss this? Like, how did we not include this in the original plan? Well, in retrospect, come to find out that there's so many archaeological sites in Ohio, you probably couldn't see them all if you went somewhere every single day of the year. But this particular day, we found ourselves looking at this site, and after really talking to the historians and understanding the magnitude of how big and how important to history this site was, I think we all had, without exaggeration, a spiritual moment that day because it really overwhelms the senses. And so for me, that day of all the synchronicities and all the things that had happened on this trip up to that point, I think they all started to culminate at the Mound City complex that day, and we all left just floored. I think that's a safe way to put it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, again, part of what's so fascinating about this is that, as is fairly well known, there's a subdiscipline within archaeological studies, which is archaeoastronomy, and it has to do with how much people in the ancient world knew about celestial phenomena. And very interestingly, it is known that we see, for instance, at Karnak, in Egypt, we see at Stonehenge in the UK, and at many of the North American, Native American sites too, that there are celestial alignments with structures that align themselves with, for instance, the rising of the sun on the summer equinox, or the setting of the sun at different times of the year. Typically with the equinoxes, they had an idea of when the longest and the shortest days of the year occurred, and they built structures that aligned themselves with these kind of things. Now, the Mound City complex, again, was extraordinary in that regard, because not only are there all of these earthen structures, these mounds, some of them that were also used for burials, that were employed by the Hopewell culture. What we also find is that there was an incredible knowledge not only of the celestial phenomena and that these earthen mounds were built in alignment with this, but then in terms of the actual geography of the region and certain geological aspects of the region as well, mountaintops and things like this, there were alignments that were, the site was chosen so that it could actually be positioned within areas where alignments could occur in terms of the actual topological plane of the earth where these sites sit. We also have this interesting aspect that, for instance, at a number of the Hopewell sites, we've got these large circular and large square divisions, and usually what they consist of, and Mound City was one such site, they have a large square, a large circle, and then a smaller circle. Burials only took place within one of those circles at each of these sites, but the diameter of the circle was around 1,070 square feet. And interestingly, the square that was adjacent to it could fit perfectly into this circle. Now, it'd be one thing if that were the case only at Mound City, but what's fascinating is that so many of these Hopewell sites throughout Ohio and the surrounding region, it's the same diameter of the largest circle. The square adjacent to it fits almost perfectly within the diameter. So you also see that there's this geometric knowledge and extensive measurements that were being made when they went to these sites. And there was a moment where the guys and I, we were there, we walked down to the river, and we were just standing there just kind of, it was just a beautiful afternoon, and we kind of went down there, just all of us, just to kind of, gosh, man, just take all this in. And I sat down with the camera and I said, I'm reminded of the Antikythera mechanism, which comes up a lot. In fact, we actually have talked about this on one of the forthcoming 7 Ages audio journal podcasts, but the Antikythera mechanism being a little device that in ancient Greece was so far ahead of its time, an ancient computer, and a little one that functioned that nonetheless, very much like modern clocks do, with gears and cogs and wheels and things, and it could make certain very distinctive and scientific observations and measurements as it related to celestial phenomena. I'm thinking to myself, what we're seeing up here in large scale in this field, at this Hopewell site and at all these other Hopewell sites, is essentially the same thing. It is, you could liken it to being a machine. And what's so incredible to me is that if there's one thing we know about technology over time, the progression of technology leads to the miniaturization of components. And you'll see that what once would fill an entire room of old school computers back in the 1960s, you can fit into the palm of your hand. You can fit onto a single microchip circuit these days. There's more technology on the portable multifunction device that we carry around in our pockets, our iPhones and our smartphones, than what sent us to the moon. And much the same, the Hopewell culture on a large scale format had a simple machine which was constructed of earthen mounds that made the same sorts of projections and calculations about celestial phenomena that later the Antikythera mechanism would do, and that later on beyond that, star charts, and yes, also digital devices in the modern era do today. So we have incredibly advanced technology that these people had at their disposal. We had an advanced knowledge of celestial mechanics. We had a lot more people coming to these Hopewell sites from other parts of the world and bringing things from different regions, whether it be megalodon shark teeth or whether it be metals extracted from different parts of the country. I mean, this was a site not only that was very practical in its design, but which was of perhaps ceremonial importance to people all around North America and was sort of a spiritual hub at that time. So again, I think I speak for both the guys. I know, Jason kind of mentioned it as being the place that struck him the greatest. It's hard to compare between that, or as James said, the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, or as we've mentioned a few times, and I think I'll just weigh in as my personal favorite, probably the Serpent Mound. I didn't feel the impact when we were there. I did know about the setting of the sun on the summer solstice aligning with the mouth of the serpent, but as our research continues and with the interdisciplinary approach, or as we would affectionately term it, the interdigitation that occurs in our interest in studies, to borrow the words of Dr. J. M. Matavasio, who we interviewed at Meadowcroft, there is this peculiar persistence of symbology across cultures around the ancient world that involves a snake with the fire on its face, or the sun passing through the body of the serpent, or the fire-breathing dragon, whatever you want to call it. The Serpent Mound, I don't know that is what it represents. It certainly could be. And the possibilities in terms of what was in the ancient mind that caused them to create not only the symbolic essence of this, but also this incredible mechanism, or the thought that went into these mechanisms and their practical functionality. It really blew our minds. And I think we saw a little of that at every site that we went to.
So how about more in-person research expeditions? What's next for Seven Ages team?
Oh, well, we are actually working on that as we speak here tonight. We're constantly looking forward. We have a couple of things coming up here, just small research things that we're kind of doing on an individual basis. But we're planning some more trips for 2018. We'd like to get up to the Smithsonian at some point in 2018 to be able to talk with some of the staff there and some of the researchers and scientists. Also, there's just, unlimited amounts of things there to report on and write about and film. So Smithsonian's on the list. We would also like to do a trip south. We'd like to visit the Etowah Mounds. We'd like to get down into Mississippi. There's parts of Tennessee we want to go see. Again, there's so much history in this nation that's, right under people's noses that they generally don't even know is there. And also, as part of the Ohio trip, we did realize on this trip just how many archaeological sites there are, how many mysteries there are just in that area, Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. So we definitely would like to get back up there when the weather clears up, maybe in the summertime or maybe the fall. And then at some point, we would like to get out more your way. We'd like to get out to the western states and examine some of the sites and mysteries out that way as well.
I mean, maybe we could just take a detour and, I don't know if it could fit into 7 Ages, but we go to Rachel and Tickaboo Peak, see what we see.
Oh, we can fit that in.
Yeah, it might fit better on TGR, but we'll find a place for it,
Oh, yeah. It's a cultural significance.
Hey,
that is very true.
It truly is, because it's something that runs back into deep antiquity. So this isn't a new thing, and if you got to label it other than anything that we can fit it under the 7 Ages label, it's definitely a cultural symbol. That's for sure.
Very true.
Yeah, but some people just go up there to Tickaboo to look for Area 51.
Yeah, they've moved it all now. We know this. There's nothing there anymore.
Yeah.
SR-72, the Raider, the new Blackbird they're coming out with, or the stealth bomber. It's called the Raider. Did you guys see that?
No, I haven't seen this.
No.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, actually. I forget the cost of each one, $60 million or whatever it might be, but they're supposed to be working on that out there.
Just think about this, Shannon. That $60 million that it costs to produce each one of those whatever has come after the SR-71 Blackbird, which was decommissioned, I think, back in the late 90s, probably. The individual cost of each of those is a little less than 3 times what the entire federal budget was on studying UFOs up until 2012.
That's right. That's incredible. Yeah, and that's a whole nother subject. I should get you guys on again soon just to talk about that whole wonderful news that just came out. So I know that everyone's been quite abuzz with that. So, well, let's roll through one more time where everybody can find 7 Ages. And then, of course, Micah, plug all your current projects.
Sure, I'll let the guys take it away with 7 Ages stuff, and I'll wrap up on the caboose. How's that?
Sounds good.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So 7 Ages can be found at 7ages.org. That's going to be the website. There you can find articles and links to all of the other media, which will include the YouTube channel by the same name, and then also 7 Ages Audio Journal, which is the podcast that should be available as soon as we start putting the episodes up, hopefully around January 5th.
Yeah, we'll have all those episodes up here shortly. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. If you can think of it and name it, we will probably be there. And, of course, all of that will in some way be linked to the other endeavors I have going on, but you can find all that information at micahhanks.com and also at Gralien Report, Gralien Report.com. So those are, I think, all of the capital endeavors that we'll be working on. These guys have been on that podcast with me. Looking forward to launching the new one and really just kind of getting things rolling here in the new year, Shannon. So thank you so much for having us on. It's really been so great.
Oh, you bet. And I'll make sure to get this up Thursday so that it will be timely.
Or Micah hasn't slept in weeks.
He's not even kidding, though.
I mean, between you and Sam, I also call Sam Sheeran. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're vampires. I really do not think that they actually need sleep. Like, you guys don't sparkle or any of that dumb shit. You just don't sleep.
Well,